Can you hear me?
Got you, Jay.
Cool. My name is Jay Wellman. I've been on the commission for 6 minutes. So thanks for having me. And I'm currently in Phoenix for the next 4 months. We just had a newborn a month ago, so we are chasing warmer temperatures with our toddler and newborn so we can spend some time outside. But I moved to Flagstaff to mountain bike and lived out of a camper, and that progressed into a career in Flagstaff and a family in Flagstaff. And through that, I've always been a cyclist, walker, backpacker, and through having now 2 kids, more pedestrian, just FUTs, walking downtown, all that kind of stuff. So I'm excited to be part of this and present in the community.
Great. Thanks, Jay. Glad to have you.
Thanks.
Go to our city folks, handlers.
I'll go. I'm Martin Entz. I'm a transportation planner for the city. I've worked for the city since 1997. When I first came, I was more of a land use planner. And then in 2006, I kind of transitioned over to more transportation. I've been handling, what's the correct?
I like that.
Liaising both the Bike Advisory Committee and the Pedestrian Advisory Committee since about 2006. And recently we added 2 new staff members, Chris and Carlton, and I'll use it as a segue to let them introduce themselves.
I'll go. Hi, everybody. Chris Fair. I'm a transportation planner with the city. I've been working with the city for a little over 1.5 years now. Moved to Flagstaff in 2021 to attend grad school at NAU and was able to move pretty seamlessly from that program into the job over here. I get to do a lot of research and writing related to our crash reports, grant projects, anything that we really need to tackle. And it's been great so far. I'm also an avid cyclist, backpacker, snowboarder, anything that they got in Flagstaff, really.
Yeah. Right. Carlton Johnson. So I'm a transportation planner here, as well as my second stint at the city. I was a comprehensive planner a few years ago, and in between worked on the private sector in land use planning. Before that, I was a civil engineer, so I have a background in engineering and planning. I am from Flagstaff, moved away a couple times for school and came back a couple times, obviously.
Very cool. Yeah, thanks. All right, some of our visitors, no obligation to introduce yourself, but our bike advisory friends too.
Yeah. I'm Sam Meyer. I'm on the Bike Advisory Committee. Nice to see you all outside of that context. I'm also a Flagstaff local. I grew up here, left for school, came back only the one time so far, but maybe again.
Okay.
And my day job is at NAU in Klein Library, Special Collections and Archives. I walk or cycle everywhere. I don't own a car. So happy to be with you all.
I'm Matt Mitchell. I termed out of the Bicycle Advisory Committee.
We missed you.
Didn't participate in the Pedestrian Advisory. Avid cyclist. I raised 3 kids to their high school years. Took the kiddos to school and stuff. Saw some of the challenges with walking, youngsters to school and stuff. That's what kind of brought me to, these commissions and stuff. Now I'm an empty nester, but still there's plenty of generations ahead of us that need good walking paths. So happy to be here.
Thanks for your door.
Hello, everyone. My name is Herman Furman. Yep, rhymes. Mommy told me. I'm a transplant. I'm from New York City. And one of the things that drew me here, I've been here for 6 years, is that it is such a pedestrian city. And I've definitely have availed myself of the FUTs. Is that how you pronounce it properly?
FUTs.
FUTs. I've definitely availed myself of it. Me and my wife, we walk a lot. She's fully sighted, but she chooses not to drive or even know how to drive. We do not own a car, so we walk everywhere. So that's why. Thank you for letting me be here.
One person joined online.
Oh.
Public. Should introduce themselves.
Yeah, sure. John, would you like to introduce yourself? Not required, but we're just doing introductions to everybody. It's like a maybe with the unmuting.
You there, John?
We can do a go back if we can hear John later. John, keep talking, and if we can hear you, we'll say something. But until then, you might just be talking to yourself. But thanks everybody for doing that. It was not on the agenda, but we have a big new group of folks and also visitors. Kind of stoked to have so many people in the room. There have been several of these. Jody can attest to, and Ron also, of like 3 people, and plus counting Martin sometimes. So it's great to have people here in person. With that, we'll move on to actually the actual announcement section. If members of the PAC or staff have any announcements, I do not, but want to see if any of the PAC members have any announcements they would like to make. With none, move on to city staff.
I think
Nothing. Change that to handlers next time. And then move on to public comments. See if any of our visitors have any public comments they would like to offer for the committee. Oh, great. We'll move on now to approval of minutes. There's 3 sets of minutes. I took a quick look at them, mostly to see that I was absent for the last 2, so I cannot attest to their accuracy or not. But I don't know if folks had a chance, if anybody would like to make a motion to.
Did look them over. That's sort of my unassigned responsibility. I do it. And they look fine, yeah. So I motion to approve
Okay,
all 3. Second.
thank you, Sean. Motion and second to approve the minutes. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? Minutes passed unanimously. Martin, thanks for typing them up. Moving on to new business, the 5-year capital plan, review of the city's capital planning process and discussion of ped and bike projects.
so. We shared a presentation with you with the agenda, and I'm going to take a few minutes and go through that. This is a thing we do annually. I know if you've been on the committee for a couple of years, you've seen this information before. If you're on the BAC, you saw this information last week. But we have a few new members, and I thought it might be a good opportunity to kind of describe the process from the beginning, so you understand the context of how this fits into the city process. And in fact, what your role is in that process and how you fit into the city process that way. So I apologize if it's repetitious for some of you. Maybe the thing is, like, if you hear it 3 times, it will sink in. I don't know, but for the new people, I think this is kind of a valuable thing. Give me a moment here just to find where my presentation is. And we'll get going. And which screen do you like? Is it easier on this one or on that one?
Switch. I don't argue with Chris.
All right.
Joey said, look around, who's gonna answer? Yeah, I was like, it was too easy for me to say this one, because I'm sitting here like looking at it, so I didn't want to be that guy. Thanks, Chris.
So a little bit of context, the city does a capital plan annually, we update it. A capital plan is essentially the public projects that we want to build in the next year, over the next 5 years. So it's our plan for public projects, and it includes a variety of things. I got a few listed here. It's utilities like sewer and water lines, stormwater projects, streets, fire stations, parks, foot trails, anything public that the city builds. We plan for via the 5-year plan as a way of making sure that we can afford projects and kind of matching our revenues or our source of funding to how we're spending it. And then 2, to be kind of transparent with the public in terms of what the city is building and how we're using public money.
I just had a quick question. When does it become a capital project and when can it just be some like a minor capital project? Is there a dollar amount?
Not strictly.
Okay.
I mean, in theory, like any public project is a
Go all the way
capital
down to
project. Yeah.
$500 project.
Yeah, and in terms of the capital plan, you may have a bunch of small projects that are grouped. I mean, they may not necessarily be listed separately. Like if we're replacing a few sidewalk panels, for example, that will never appear in a capital plan.
Right, being a,
But there might be a line item for sidewalk maintenance.
because I know where I used to work, it was, I think, 1 million and above was capital. Everything below that was something else.
Okay, I got you. There is also a thing where when we build a capital project, what gets billed becomes like a city asset, and that there's an accounting for that. So that may play into what you're talking about too. So capital plans are done for a 5-year period. And the way it works is the first year is our budget for next year. So let's say we develop a draft capital plan. We have projects identified for next year. We have projects identified for the 4 years after that. So next year, if the council approves it, on July 1st, we have that money available for that project. And then the next 4 years, presumably, every year that passes, those projects would move up and become part of the budget, and we'd add new projects to the 5th year. It doesn't always work that cleanly, but that's the theory of how it goes. And that's kind of the planning part. So we actually plan out 10 years with capital projects because some of them take that long. Sometimes we have to build up enough funding to do them. Sometimes they just are anticipated further in the future than the short term. Capital planning is fiscally constrained. So we look at our sources of revenues, our sources of funding, and then we can plan capital projects against that. It's a little bit looser now with the transportation tax than it used to be. It's easier for us to move money within that tax. But in the old days, like for the Foots budget, for example, we had a list of Foots projects and our annual funding amount, they had to balance at the end of the year. Speaking of funding, for ped and bike projects, our main source of funding is Prop 419, which is technically the transportation sales tax that was renewed in 2018 and goes through 2041. Here's a slide on it. It was approved by voters in 2018. It's a sales tax. Every time you spend money in Flagstaff, part of that money goes for ped and bike projects. 419 actually describes the much bigger transportation tax. So all of our big transportation projects are being paid for with 419. The Butler 4th intersection that we reviewed last year, Lone Tree Overpass, parts of the downtown mile, John Wesley Powell, and a few other ones. A part of that tax is set aside for pedestrian and bike projects. And I've got it listed here that the part for ped and bike was originally anticipated at $29 million over 20 years. In the first couple of years, the tax started in 2020. So over the first couple of years, our receipts have been in excess of expectations, estimates. So we're taking in more money than we thought we did. We won't get into specifics, but it's considerably more money than we thought we were going to have, which is great. That's really good news. At the same time, construction costs have skyrocketed. I mean, they're through the roof. I don't know which one has gone up faster, if we're at a break-even point or if we're ahead on revenues or how that works. We'll know after 20 years. Over the last couple of years, we've had several opportunities for grants, including like Butler Avenue at $12 million. Anytime we get a grant, that gives us more money from Prop 419 to spend on ped bike. So all the things that you see that we're planning, when we go to the section we're talking about projects, are the things that we had planned as part of that 2018 ballot initiative that would be paid for with what we thought was $29 million over the next 20 years. It's probably worth mentioning too that maintenance are separate line items. They're not paid for either through the grant funding or through Prop 419. So this goes all the way back to 2018. We went through a process of identifying and prioritizing potential projects that would be paid for, in part because we wanted to know if the tax was approved, how we would spend that money. We wanted to kind of get ahead of it and know what we were going to spend money on. And part of it was in order to convince the public to vote for the tax, I think we had to kind of convince them, like, what are you paying for? If you're voting for this tax, what will you get in exchange for that sales tax? So our process had 4 steps. It covers 5 basic components: sidewalks, foot trails, bikeways, enhanced crossings, which are at grade, at street level, and separated crossings, which are bridges and tunnels. Our 4 steps were we did an inventory. So what do we have existing? What are we missing? Or what do we want to plan for? We went through and determined how they might be built. So in some cases, sidewalks or foot trails are built as part of private development. They're built as part of roadway projects, et cetera. And if another project is going to build them, then we don't have to account for the financing as a separate project. All the projects that are left, we do, and they become standalone projects. And they're really the ones that we build into the capital plan and use the 419 money for. Third step is we prioritized, and I'll talk about how that happened in a moment. And then the final step is we do programming, which is essentially the capital planning. So we take our priorities and start plugging them into a 5-year capital plan.
Martin, could you just give an example of when you mentioned that some things are part of other projects, like how that works out? Because that was new to me when I got on this.
Yeah. Let's take on the Lone Tree Overpass as an example. So that goes from Butler to 66 over the railroad tracks. They're going to build sidewalks on both sides. Well, a sidewalk on one side and a foot trail on the other side, and separated bike lanes on both sides. So those are ped bike facilities that are built as part of a roadway that we don't have to build separately. Or the Butler corridor from Little America to 4th Street is another good example. We've identified that as being lacking in bike lanes and sidewalks for a long time. When that project goes in and the street is rebuilt, they'll build sidewalks and separated bike lanes as part of it. Other cases, there's not a project like that to identify. So if a sidewalk is going to get built that's missing, we have to fund it and forward it as a project with 419 money. I mean, we could use examples of private development as well. In some cases, they're obligated to finish sidewalks, or if they build new streets, they build sidewalks as part of it, et cetera. So on the priority side, we looked at 4 factors for each one of those 5 components: sidewalks, et cetera. The first was generators and attractors. So those are things that attract or generate walking and biking trips. So think of schools, parks, commercial areas, employment areas, high-density residential areas, et cetera. Social factors is the second one. Those are things, kind of features or characteristics that make it more likely that people would walk or bike. So we look at things like low-income neighborhoods, neighborhoods where there are more households that don't have access to a vehicle, places where there are social service agencies provided, that sort of thing. Third is need and functionality. So this is kind of a combination of our own thoughts and expertise about planning some of these, like how useful they will be in the big picture. It's also kind of the summation of all the things that we've heard from the public over the years, in surveys, in casual conversations at the grocery store, whatever, about where we're missing sidewalks, or where we need a better crossing, or where it would be really useful to have an overpass or something like that. I think if we accounted for that in some way formally, it would be a lot of information over the years. The fourth one is kind of individual to, depending on what kind of component it is. So for sidewalks and crossings, we used how comfortable is a roadway. So for example, for sidewalks, if a street is faster or wider or busier, it was scored higher if it's missing a sidewalk than like a residential street. And then bikeways kind of followed the same process, but it used different factors than the 4 I just mentioned. And then once that was done, we could assign 4 different priority levels. And then based on that, 3 different timeframes. And the timeframes fit right into how we do capital planning. So we've got some within 5 years, some within 20, and then some are beyond 20. And the principal difference between the priorities and the timeframes is that the priorities are not fiscally constrained, but the timeframes are. So within 5 years is based on what we expect to have funding for within the next 5 years. Within 20 years matches the lifespan of the tax. So originally it was whatever projects we can afford for $29 million. And beyond 20 years is everything else beyond that. So the dynamic changes when we take in more tax revenue from the tax than we anticipated. Now we have more than $29 million. If it's outpaced construction costs, we may have more capacity to build more than we thought we did. Every time we get a grant, that money kind of goes back into it, so it increases our capacity to build projects. So, a lot of this, when you think about anticipating what's going to happen in 20 years, it's purely guesswork. So part of the process is we go back every year and sort of reevaluate where we are. Because I'm sure when we get to the 20 years, what we thought was going to be the project we were working on or our priorities is going to be different. And we should have that flexibility, and it's good for us to talk about it. So any questions? That's really the kind of the process. So for better or for worse, the capital planning process kicks off like right after Thanksgiving and keeps us really, really busy through the holidays. Getting our information together. But luckily we've once you do it a couple times, we've got all the information. It's easier to adjust that information than to start from scratch. So we're not starting from scratch. As part of the public process, we always take it to the ped and bike committees to have them. It won't look tremendously different really from last year, but we want you to have the opportunity to see what projects we're talking about. I think it's a good time to talk about what's happened in the year since we did this the last time and see if things are changed. There are a few things I think are worth considering. Okay, so I've got this set up to be first kind of a listing of the categories that show up in the budget or in the capital plan, and then maps that show where the actual projects are, which makes it kind of easier to talk about what they are. So for foots, we have a couple of general categories. One's improvements and enhancements. So we put money aside just to improve the trails that we have if there are ongoing issues like drainage or repairs needed. We have some money for foot signing to keep that system kind of up to date. We've talked before with this group about asphalt trail repairs. In fact, I think it's in the, I don't think it's an agenda item, but it might be in the reports. So I'll give you a little bit of an update on that. We invented a category called single track forest access, which we'll see where they're located. So it's really just connecting the foot system to forest service trails. And then the last category is all the individual foots trail projects, which we'll see. So this is a series of maps. These kind of layer on top of each other. Here are existing trails in dark, solid, and then our planned trail system in dashed. And then if I layer on, these are the trails that we expect to be built as part of private development. So this is Canyon del Rio over kind of south of Butler. This would be part of everything around the new John Wesley Powell extension. So a few trails, a bunch of trails. This is Timber Sky. And then there's a couple smaller ones. This is along Lake Mary Road. And it was recently approved by the council as a condition of a residential development that is kind of out on Lake Mary Road. And there's a few other smaller ones. The thing about private development is we don't really have any control over when it happens. And so we think these things might happen in the next 5 years, but it could be, some may happen sooner than that. Some may never happen, like they, fall off the table for one reason or another, but it's our best guess.
Martin, what's that trail just north of Campbell Mesa? What development is that? That one?
At the end of Cortland, between the last set of apartment buildings and the interstate, there's a planned development. Do you live on I wonder if anybody knows that they under construction, they might be.
I don't know. Yeah, I go by there a lot.
They're building a trail through there as part of it, yeah, which was planned.
I know that's there.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So Martin, is this map updated? I see a proposed trail that's dashed green that I know is in a state section that was just sold to a private entity. Is part of this process updating that to show that what was proposed, it'll now be a purple line instead?
Once they get to a point where they're kind of within the process for development. So now I know that land's been sold, but there's nothing really been proposed, so it's kind of early for that. This area's been, as part of the JWP planning area, has had a lot of conversations about where the alignment of JWP is. And we've been participating in that kind of all along and adjusting our trails plan to make sure that the essential elements of it stay intact, like trails that make connections that we had planned on, still make that connection, that where we get access to the forest, we're still getting access to the forest, et cetera. Even though the realignment has forced us to kind of move trails around and think differently about a few things. And we had underpasses planned as well as part of JWP. And as the alignment shifted, we kind of had to, mind that they were still part of the plan. So that area changes a little bit. We've been updating things as process has gone along. So these are trails that are built as part of public capital projects. So the ones in the middle are for the Lone Tree Overpass. This is the trail section that goes under Milton. It's part of Beulah University. These two right along the tracks downtown are part of the downtown mile, but the connection of the Karen Cooper Trail up past the library is part of the Rio to Flag. So we could have a separate discussion about whether the Rio to Flag is going to happen in 5 years or not. But when it does, we know that trail is anticipated. And that brings us to the projects that we include in the capital plan that are standalone, that we fund separately. So these are the projects that were in the last capital plan. The main one here is the Fox Glen Trail, and then the Schweitzer Canyon Trail, which is fully acquired and designed. We're just kind of waiting for the bidding process to proceed. And I won't go through all these in like real detail, but if you have any questions about them, just chime in and we can talk about them. The next slide shows other trails that we might consider because of what's happened in the last year. And generally what that refers to is if like a development is going in and builds a part of a trail, do we want to think about going in afterwards and completing that trail, like putting money in our budget to make sure that it connects fully to the system. So these might be worth just mentioning. This is really hard to see, and I apologize for that, but I did send you an online map.
Yeah, I did look at it.
Let's zoom in to your heart's content, see where these things are. This first one is a connection between the Schweitzer Canyon Trail and where the Lone Tree Overpass is going to come out at Route 66. So on a map, that distance between those two trails is really, really short, and it would make a compelling connection between those two systems. In reality, there's about a 20-something foot cliff that needs to be engineered over, around, under something, but definitely, I think the connection is compelling enough that we should do that work to see if we can make that happen. The second one, I'll go over to the east side. And again, this is Canyon del Rio. And when that happens, if the Fox Glen Trail happens, there'll be a missing piece across one piece of private land and some city land to actually connect back into Fox Glen Park. So we should begin to anticipate that in our budget to make sure that we're ready to do that when the other pieces that are being done privately come through. This one's similar. So when this part of this is a development called Juniper Point. It's kind of squiggly trails in the Bone Arrow Wash, if you're familiar with that. And when they build that trail, there's going to be a missing piece from there back to the pond by the water treatment plant. So again, we should anticipate that in the next couple of years, make sure that we have money and a project identified. So we're ready to make that connection when Juniper Point develops. There's a couple short pieces. These are already part of it. So Alara, the student housing project, built the start of a foots trail, and we need to continue it through the wash down to the existing Sinclair Trail. Along here, there's a couple of private development that are building a little short piece of trail, and if we want it to connect, we need to build the trails on either end of it. This is the roundabout at Beulah University. So there's a trail that will take people under Milton and then kind of pop up on the Target side. And it would be really, really useful if that trail continued all the way to NAU. I think it's going to, in the interim, exist as is it an 8-foot sidewalk? Smaller, 6-foot sidewalk?
They just redid it,
The whole thing?
the sidewalk. I think it's 8,
Okay.
but yeah, brand new, but 8, not quite 10 for two-way traffic. So close.
So maybe that project is just tacking on 2 feet onto the 8 feet. So it's it's 1/4 less cost than it was before. And then over on the Timber Sky end, there's a couple of connections that we could think about. One is between the trails that Timber Sky builds and the trail that is by the city's public works yard. Again, a really, really short section of trail per the map. The tricky part is getting across Route 66, which is a highway through there. And I don't know exactly how we're going to do that, but we should look into it. And then further out, Timber Sky is building this trail along the wash. It ends at kind of the city limits, and there's a couple of county parcels that have development proposed. And I think we're going to be getting an easement through those developments that would take us out to Flag Ranch Road. But we'll just get the easement or the rights to build the trail. If we want to actually continue that trail, we need to plan it as a project and put money in the budget for it. So those are the ones that we thought of that were not in the capital plan before, but because circumstances have changed, we may want to include them now to identify them as projects and have money for them. I guess we'll pause there and those are the kind of the things that we've identified based on our priorities, but is there anything that you see that we have planned as a trail that feels like it ought to be a priority? It would be really nice to have in 5 years. And it's challenging because there's a whole lot of trails that would be really nice to have in the next 5 years, but in reality, we probably won't be able to get to it. I'll let you think about that. You don't have to have your final answer
I'm
tonight.
a big fan of the process, I think. The fact that there's a master plan and there's money and you're constantly reevaluating, it's refreshing to say the least. Yeah, I've been places where that's not how it was done, so.
The only thing to be cautious of in that scenario is I think you're right. It's helpful to have a good process and have it all kind of documented, but like the process has to lead to construction.
It does have to be results,
Yeah.
How long have the dotted planned foots trails been planned? Like the ones that you showed first?
It depends. The oldest ones are like 1989.
Oh, it's pretty old.
No.
So is there already a prioritization scheme in place for some of those? The original dotted lines? Just thinking there's a lot being added here. So what's the thought process between where to go first?
They don't get higher priority because they've been planned longer, if that's part of your question.
Sure.
They're thrown into the same mix.
But there is a map with like the whatever, what are the priority classes, the 3 under 5 years, there is a map of all.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah.
Isn't the foots from the 1980s? Isn't that like when the first trails got built?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. And he didn't speak during public comment, but I'll throw a plug in for John Sleva worked for the city for a long time as a planner and pretty much single-handedly started the Foots program in the 1980s. He was around at the beginning and like really saw it get started, take hold, become popular and grow. And he retired a few years ago and it's like really nice to see him still engaged in the city stuff. Okay, the last category is the single track access. And again, these are just places where we have an opportunity to connect from the foot system in town to the forest trails around town. And kind of enhance the ability of residents to get from wherever they live, whatever neighborhood they're in, out to the forest without having to drive to a trailhead. Since a lot of these are connecting to single track trails, we think that they don't need to be built to a full foot standard. And if we do them as single track, they're much easier to build and much less expensive. So we could wait 15 years for a foots trail, or we could build a single track. This is I think an example of where we kind of need to work on how we do project delivery. And I guess we'll talk about that a little bit at the end, like how we go from a line in a map to an actual trail or sidewalk or whatever it is. And we haven't really gotten there with the single track ones, but that's one of the things that we need to work on a little bit. So I'll do bikeways a little bit quicker. So these are the categories that we have. Here we introduce the last category is first mile, last mile, which is a transit grant that we're using to build sidewalks, bikeways, and crossings that enhance access to transit. So we'll see where those are located. Just for context, here's the overall bikeways map. We use kind of a functional class. So the trails in purple are primary. They're the ones that would get you across town. And then there's second level and third level. This is the existing and planned. These are the bikeways that are being built as part of public projects. So this is John Wesley Powell. It's new alignment. Here's Butler, where we've been missing bike lanes for a long time. This is Butler through Southside, which we'll use the federal grant for. This is Beulah University, and this is Lone Tree. Those are the main ones. This is really hard to see, but it's first mile, last mile. It's worth mentioning that for the blue bikeways, some of those are construction projects, like a road is being built, we're rebuilding Butler. These are mostly striping in a couple of categories. One is where bike lanes disappear at intersections. We're completing those facilities so they go up to an intersection and then start afterwards. In some cases, we're adding a bike lane where they're missing now. And in a handful of cases, generally the longer lines, including Cedar, Forest, Huntington, and Solier, and Lake Mary, we're adding a buffer. So it'll be a travel lane, a buffer of 2 or 3 feet, and then the bike lane. So just a little bit of extra space for cyclists. And we have other money identified for bikeway projects, but we kind of have to work through what those might look like. It might be more striping. We don't have much money for big construction projects beyond what you see here. Sidewalks, we have 2 categories generally. One is for individual projects. The other one is a more catch-all for infill, which are very short sections of sidewalks that we can group into projects. Here's what existing and missing looks like. Existing is we've inventoried all the sidewalks along all public and private streets. The missing ones, we focused only on higher level streets, so like arterials and collectors instead of individual residential streets. These are the sidewalks that are built as part of public projects. It's our Butler by Little America, Beulah University roundabout. And then this is the ramp along Linda Vista, or what Linda Vista becomes. And the city's building a detention basin in that triangle. And so we're going to throw a little bit of money at it. They're going to build a sidewalk and a bike lane on that slip ramp.
That's starting now, right?
Yes, that's starting soon. Yeah. Again, I apologize for the shade of green that was chosen, but Is it even readable? Barely. Those are the green is the sidewalks that are built as part of first mile, last mile. We're getting mostly through review of those things, and we're hoping to start construction next spring on some of these. I'll just describe them really quickly. It's San Francisco north up by Columbus. The last couple of missing pieces on Schweitzer Canyon, including the piece in front of the doghouse.
Yeah.
Huntington over on the east side. And really, this is kind of almost a pure transit project because it helps get people from the shelter and from the food bank along Huntington out to transit, which is a need. Over on the west side, we have Forest Meadows and a piece of Highland Mesa. And then further south, a piece of Lake Mary Road, and then a little bit of the Nita where it goes into the neighborhood. In purple are the projects that we have identified in the capital plan. So missing pieces along the east side of 4th Street have been kind of our highest priority for, how many years are we going on?
Too many.
Too many. We'll leave them in the capital plan. It's a property rights issue. We don't have the right of way to build it. But they would be much needed sidewalks. This section here is along Fort Valley Road, generally from, what's this street? Drawing a complete blank. Navajo, yeah, thank you. Good work. Out to Meade. This is like Steves and Lincoln. And we had originally included that as part of first mile, last mile to see if we can do that. Do you know where Steves Lincoln is? Kind of in the midst of the Chinese restaurant and the shopping center. It needs something. And sidewalks and bike lanes should be a good start, but it got really complicated really quickly. So we kind of had to, and it was right of way was involved. So we pulled out of first mile, last mile. But I think we should go back and like have an engineer do more of a thorough study to see how we might fit sidewalks and bike lanes in that area.
Crossing.
Like,
Yeah, the boomerang down to the light with the 166 with the people coming on Lake and going
Yeah,
across to the shopping center.
yeah.
The traffic piles up quite a bit there and you can cross between the cars when they're stopped, but then it's kind of dicey.
So what we, not to get too far into the weeds, but where are the stop signs? It's not a four-way stop, is it?
What I'm remembering is that the Steves Boulevard has right of way. Yeah.
Okay, so you stop on Lincoln, yeah. So we could look at how to do that, like how to have crossings there, what it would take as part of it. So I think you're right.
Big chunk of the backup there comes from the light. And what happens is it's just big backup of cars pull all the way up almost to the convenience store and you can't get across.
Like
Even
waiting-
traffic can't
Yeah.
get across.
Yeah. Sidewalks may not fix that, but it will
Oh, but it's sometimes
make it safer.
as we go through all of these projects, I mean, as the years go by, we'll discover new things that our new projects introduces new needs or new desires.
A crosswalk button would certainly help in that zone, just because it is such a confusing intersection.
And at least feeling like you kind of have the right to cross instead of squeezing between bumpers.
Yeah, I think that intersection is even tough to read as an intersection now because there's just like street and then paved parking lots and no sidewalks whatsoever.
curve.
So. A big curve, yeah.
It's really hard for anybody on foot or especially on bicycle. It's really difficult to navigate that area.
Yeah, it's a 2-stop sign because it only has 2 stop signs, right? And the one off of 66 can just turn in and do whatever they want, right? Is that right? Sorry.
Yeah, but is there a second stop sign on Steves? I don't think there's a stop sign on Steves.
I think there's one heading east from Golden Dragon, and then if you were heading south towards 66, you stop, and then Steve's going north, you can just go straight or left, and there's no stop for you. And so that's what also adds the confusion as a pedestrian or a cyclist, is navigating who's stopping and who isn't. Because I don't think it's it's not an all way.
So just based on this conversation, that feels like a group that's a good one to move forward, yeah. So this is the red is the infill sidewalks. You can see they're short, scattered all over the place. We've done a few of them already. We've kind of run out of the ones that are really, really easy to do, and to the ones that are harder to do. So we like these, we actually have to have an engineer draw some plans up for us, and it may take right of way, but we'll keep working on that. Enhanced crossings, these are at grade, so you're crossing the street, but we give you some additional enhancements to make pedestrians more visible, to make it more likely that cars yield or stop, whatever it takes to kind of make that crossing safer. We count in this category the beacon crossings, which include the amber flashing ones and the red flashing ones, which are RFBs and PHBs, which are rectangular flashing beacons and pedestrian hybrid beacons. Or we just call them amber and red, your choice.
This is a lovely map. Just all these places where you have to, it's a real pain right now. If these go in, that'll be great.
Yeah, so gray is the ones enhanced crossings we have. Orange is where we've identified, and there's a few. We've identified a few where crossings might be handy. These are being built as part of public projects. These two are part of Butler. This one, believe it or not, is we had identified as needed because of the truck stop at Little America and the truck parking across the street, where there's constantly people crossing that road. It's a little bit nerve-wracking, a little bit hair-raising. And then this is a future project at Oak Mountain Country Club. The green are our first mile, last mile, so 3 on Fort Valley, 5 on Solier, and 2 on Lake Mary. So the 3 on Fort Valley, 2 of them would just be islands, one at Meade, one kind of at Anderson. They correspond to transit stops generally, and fratellis, if you're.
Did the ones on Solier also correspond to transit stops?
Yes, directly to transit stops, yeah. And then the one at, and the ones on Solier are islands as well. So no flashing beacon, but just an island. Islands help break crossings into 2, so a pedestrian if you only have to look one way and see if traffic's coming, you cross to the island, then you can look the other way. Even that simple improvement has a significant safety benefit. And Solier is fast. I don't know if anybody has experienced it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Solier Speedway. The last one on Fort Valley is at Fort Valley and Forest. And this would likely be the red flashing. So a pedestrian would hit a button, red flashing lights would come on, cars are required to stop, the pedestrian can cross. Actually, the first light is solid red, so vehicle is required to stop. And then after a short interval, the light switches to flashing red, which means if the pedestrian has cleared, the car can proceed. Flashing red means you stop and then proceed when it's safe to do so.
Martin, this would cross the highway, yes.
Yeah, this would be across that south leg of Fort Valley.
Is there any discussion about enhancement there, the crosswalk as it crosses Forest? Because cars turning right off of 180 to go up Forest often don't see pedestrians because it's uphill. You're not necessarily looking up a hill for somebody to come down the hill and cross. And you're also, people are hauling. But if you're turning off of 180 left onto Forest, you're trying to beat the traffic and you're gunning it and they're not looking for a pedestrian. So I've almost hit people there many times, just trying to get to work.
We did not have anything planned on that leg. You're talking about across Forest right there.
Yeah.
There's a crosswalk markings there.
Yeah.
We could look at it. I'm not sure if the crossing, if having that red light on Fort Valley would change that dynamic at all.
Were there some, in the previous map, were there some along Route 66, like on the west side over by where the old Daily Sun used to be? And it's like, okay, thanks. Some of those areas are really crazy and Route 66 moves so fast through there now.
Yeah.
When pedestrians are trying to cross, that's always an interesting dicey situation.
So this shows that stretch.
Okay,
And you can see we have two orange dots, but what we don't see is that there are intersections at Thompson.
That one's
at Railroad
really bad.
Springs, and assuming that if there was a signal at Thompson, for example, our crossing needs are taken care of.
yeah,
If there's a signal, right?
Right.
Same at Railroad Springs. So we're kind of defaulting to those future plans.
so that's a transportation planning thing, like for a signal.
Yes, and in fact, the city and Metro Plan are looking at all of West Route 66 as a comprehensive corridor.
Great.
Now, I think if it came out that those would not be signalized for a number of years, then maybe there's an interim step where we use a beacon.
Cool.
I don't know. But that, otherwise it looks like there's not many crossings along Route 66, but it's only because we haven't accounted for those future plans. Same at Woody Mountain Road right here. So here's Railroad Springs, here's Thompson, here's Woodlands Village.
There's all those houses going in west of there now too, between the interstate and 66. I mean, that whole west 66 is, I assume it's gonna get signalized soon.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
yeah.
people are never gonna be able to get out of their neighborhood or back in.
It's busy.
It's very busy, yeah.
One crossing that I have that isn't on this, I don't think, is Futz Trail up and over Forest, North Pine Cliff Drive. There is a crosswalk and a yield sign for cyclists and pedestrians there, but cars turning in have a bush that blocks view and the view from if you're stopped there as a cyclist or pedestrian. And so having a physical button press there would be a good visual because I have almost been hit there a couple times.
You're talking about right at Forest.
Yeah, if you're going up and over the hill towards Buffalo Park east at the North Pine Cliff turn, that like you can't take a left or right. You have to either right into it or you right out of it.
Yep.
If you're getting back onto Forest, that there's big bushes there that block view, and a button there would be, in my mind, a very good enhancement for safety.
There one here at like Reardon Ranch by the Chick-fil-A. At that intersection, that's like the Chick-fil-A behind the library, that apartment complex and single track.
On River Ranch.
It's I guess it's Reardon Ranch and Reardon, right? That intersection right there,
Yeah.
right around there. Cause I mean, I go there all the time, so I may be biased, but students are always back and forth there and there's no stop or anything, even stop sign would be helpful.
So they're walking along Rear.
They're just jaywalking across. Yeah.
Okay.
Right
Okay.
by especially by the Chick-fil-A, there's a lot of, cause you can't cross except at the light on 66.
Okay, that's a good one to look at.
Yeah. And the apartment complex is right there too, so it's busy.
Yeah. It's like right in here. So those streets aren't, generally very busy or very fast, so we probably don't need like a high level, but
No, just
like showing people where to cross or whatever, yeah, providing some facilities is beneficial. And then I think, at your last meeting, a question came up about, Sawmill, kind of in a similar
Yeah,
fashion, and
it's low speed, but there's high volume of people charging across there.
so we had a project going at one time. We did pedestrian counts. Like right at that student housing across Sawmill, and there were a lot of pedestrians crossing. And we had a project to add the curb ramps that we needed and the crosswalk markings, and I don't know what became of that, but I could look into that. I think it's very similar to the one that Sam just brought out. It's a fairly easy,
Speed limit, yeah.
yeah, it's a fairly easy street to cross, but we still need like curb ramps.
We tell them where they should go,
And
yeah.
potentially markings too,
Right.
yeah. Yeah.
Not that they're gonna necessarily follow it, but
But we don't,
start.
yeah, and we don't need like a beacon or.
I wouldn't think
Other
so.
enhancements like, or Nile.
Now they just cross wherever they happen to end up.
Yeah, there's a painted crosswalk on Reardon or Reardon Ranch that's closer to like kid music, that building.
Yeah,
But people aren't crossing there. They're
Yeah.
crossing to get to, Sprouts or the apartment complex.
I think there's a few places along campus where students cut through where there really aren't like sidewalks.
Yeah.
And those would be like interesting to document to see where,
Fix the hole in the fence, yeah.
yeah, where's the hole in the fence, yeah. So orange is the project we have in the capital plan. One would be likely either a red flashing or amber flashing crossing at Humphreys by Fine.
Or the limited visibility. I mean, like
Yeah.
you're going and,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, Elm, like we looked at Elm, Fine and Hunt. And Elm has really bad visibility. Fine is a little bit better. Hunt is probably better still. But it's really students who are using Mountain Line or otherwise getting to campus at Flag High who are going across Humphreys. So we actually have, that's money that's budgeted. We started to do some preliminary work with ADOT to move that forward. The second one is along Milton, somewhere between Plaza and University, or actually Reardon and University. And this one, we have not really done any work on. I know ADOT knows that we have it planned, but we haven't really talked to them about it. With an ADOT crossing, we just follow their rules, basically, like they have a series of steps you have to go through. One of which is counting how many pedestrians are crossing now, which it's kind of a tough threshold to meet. But I think we could look at that whole section. We would count how many pedestrians are crossing in that whole section. And assume, that they would be using the crossing if we provided one. And the last one we have in the capital plan is the Foots Crossing at Woodlands Village, close to Walmart.
Yeah, that is treacherous.
Yeah.
I'd expect to see somebody pop out there.
The minutes reflect that there were a lot of like head nods.
I've said before,
Voices
that's the
of
one
agreement.
crossing that prevents my kids from taking the bus because they can't get from the bus stop across.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, that and we go a little bit further down. I don't have my kids walk that section because there's a lot of folks sleeping under that bridge.
Yeah.
And so it's a little dicey.
Yeah, so we don't know the answer for that one. We have to, where that trail crosses is fairly close to a signal.
Yeah, really close.
We'd have to figure out like what level of improvement would be required to make the crossing safe, right? That would be the bottom line. It's clearly a crossing, but what facilities should we be thinking about? Okay, on to grade separated crossing. These are bridges and tunnels. We have all kinds of them planned in the future. These tend to be really, really expensive, but when you plan them in the right place, they're really, really useful as well. We have none in the capital plan because it was going to eat up all of our 29 million. Actually, some of these are rightfully 419 is funding, but that's a different story. So just going around, these are a couple downtown, right out behind us in this direction that will be built as part of either the downtown mile or the Rio to Flag project or both. So one is the Walnut Florence. There are two right behind us underneath 66 and the tracks. And then we count the improvements that will be made on Milton, where it goes underneath the railroad tracks as a grade separated crossing. So right now there's sidewalks, but no bike facilities. So that we count that as incomplete until the bike facilities are added, and that downtown mile project will add bike facilities to that section. These 3 are part of the Lone Tree Overpass. This one is actually either open or very close to opening. It's the one under University by Milton. And then these 3, and really this 4th one, are consequences of the city getting through the process of planning JWP and its new alignment. So these are all places where there's new roads and trails that are planned to go under. And it's part of the development agreement. So this one will be a Foots Trail, but also the Arizona Trail. This is a Fox Glen. And then this is a future project the city will undertake to widen the section of Butler underneath I-40 through that interchange. And as part of widening, we have an opportunity to add bike facilities to that roadway. So that's why it shows up on this list. We count that as a grade separated crossing because it's an underpass, but we're adding, it's missing bike facilities, so we add those. With these 3, the idea is if you build an underpass or a tunnel to an existing road, it's really, really complicated, really expensive, and quite disruptive to traffic. The one under Milton is an example of that. If we build them before the road is built, they're much less expensive and much easier. You just like literally build a concrete box and then put a road over the top of it. It's not quite that simple, but a lot simpler than using an existing road. So they're cheaper. So these are built into the development agreement and we'll help pay for these, but we'll make sure that they get done. I think that will be really, when everything is said and done and built out there, like we'll be really, really happy that we have those underpasses. The Arizona Trail especially is kind of the symbol that it is. And that's the end of my presentation. I was planning to show you how the map works, but you guys, if you take a look at it, do you want to figure that out already?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I love it, yeah.
So the next question is like all this information that we talk about, we should get out to the public. And like they voted for the 419 transportation tax. We should let them know how we're planning on spending their money and what we're doing with it. So this is what we have planned. This is what we built. This is what we're building. So there's kind of some accountability. So think about how we might make that more useful as a public facing kind of information document. I think that's it.
Hey, Martin,
Yes.
I've got one thing that you guys might have talked about and I just missed, but another place going back, and I don't see it, and it might be on the map. I'm looking at your map and it's amazing. Is an enhanced intersection right next to you guys, the Milton turnoff to downtown to Santa Fe, or whatever that street is that goes back to Thorpe. What is that?
Santa Fe.
Yeah, anyway, that weird interchange. If you are heading north on Milton and you're taking the left there and you're sitting and you get a go, you have right of way. So it's a confusing intersection. At 4:50 in the afternoon, the light is directly in your eye as a driver and you cannot see pedestrians there that are crossing.
Is that on Santa Fe?
It's that crossing that you're connected to the lingerie shop from north of there. So if you're crossing from the apartment building, crossing Santa Fe south to the lingerie store, that crosswalk that's barely visible, it exists, but you can barely see pedestrians crossing that for about 20 minutes a day. And it's extremely scary. And then also cars don't really know what's going on anyway, just because Milton has right of way and the other 2 are waiting.
Kind of scary any time of day, like if you're gonna go to the farmer's market and you're on your bike there, like, yeah.
And it's an extremely high use intersection for pedestrians and cyclists because that is the main corridor
A
to
whole lot
get
of,
to the south side.
a lot of people coming from out of town, trying to, use the misdirection of whatever Apple Maps or Google Maps that is showing them how to either get to Lowell or to get up to Snowball, taking some weird route, and they have no idea what they're doing when they go through there. It's really scary.
Let alone that the pedestrians have the right of way there. So an indicator of that would be, I think, very healthy for pedestrian safety.
But in the longer term, the downtown mile project will completely change that intersection. So all the kind of issues that occur with vehicles kind of going every which way will theoretically be addressed because the intersection will look completely different. A crossing will remain at Santa Fe and Sitgraves, which is the one you're talking about. But I think where it comes off of Route 66 and the new arrangement may make it more visible vis-a-vis the setting sun. Like you may be heading more northwest than west, approaching that. But that's worth looking into. I believe that I think that intersection of Santa Fe and Route 66 will be signalized, so that may help as well. Unfortunately,
Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, unfortunately, that even though that intersection is getting signalized, it doesn't provide a crossing of 66. So we're still kind of missing that. There's ways to like get around, but when you think about that whole section of 66/Milton from Beaver to Butler, literally, there are no really good places to cross 66. Like we're doing things like all around that, but not really addressing that particular segment with crossings. Sorry,
Yeah.
Jay, go ahead. You're gonna.
Oh, I was just gonna say, the schedule and timing though, that, could be a relatively easy fix, and whether crossings are changing, there will always be people using that as a fastest means, I feel like. But I haven't, then I guess I need to look into the plans for that last mile more. But time-wise, if that's a 5-year plan, there is an imminent threat of hitting a child every time I cross that when someone doesn't see what I'm doing. So that is something to consider.
Things that could be done if it's a long ways off.
Yes. That's all. Thanks.
Thanks, Jay. Moving on to our new business agenda. Martin, thanks for that presentation. It was awesome. I think it was a great idea to share with everybody, with all the new folks, and for me too. 2025 PAC meeting schedule.
Yes. So in the interest of aligning our meetings better with the Transportation Commission, and as you know, both the Bicycle Advisory Committee and the Pedestrian Advisory Committee are subcommittees of the Transportation Commission. So in order to better facilitate timing, so what you talk about or what you decide can go directly to a transportation, just moving the BAC and PAC meetings from the first and second Thursdays to the third and fourth Thursdays of every month. We've checked into the schedule. This meeting room is open. The only conflict for the pedestrian committee, if you move to the fourth Thursday, would be the Water Commission. We'll meet in that room next door, and I'm not sure if they have really loud, there's a lot of yelling.
I've been there. No, it's quiet group.
Water is for fighting over, so.
It is. Yeah.
Bike Advisory Committee has agreed that to move from first to third Thursdays. So it'd be up to you. You can check your schedules if you're willing to move from second to fourth. We can make that happen. And the Transportation Commission meets the first Wednesday of every other month. So it would go third Thursday, fourth Thursday, and that first Wednesday would be kind of the sequence. Your case is a little bit different than Bike Advisory. Like 2 of the Thursdays literally fall on holidays, Thanksgiving and Christmas. So we'd have to either, we can do it now or, the next couple of weeks in advance, I guess, or kind of wait till those meetings come up and poll the group and find out if you want to meet and if you want to move the meeting date to a different date or time.
I'll just say, I think this would be a good idea. I've had a spotty attendance record of the Transportation Commission meetings, but like when I was at one last week, and when we have like a 2.5 week gap, and then sometimes a 6.5 week gap, any of our conversations get really stale by the time the Transportation Commission actually gets together. And that's our opportunity for us, Martin represents us, I think, every time, both committees, but we also have the opportunity. I try to join when I can. And it's a great opportunity for us to share what we're talking about so that they can hear it, because I think our perspectives are somewhat reflected in some of the Transportation Commission members, but certainly not all of them. So I think that it would be a good idea if we could do it. I can make it work with my schedule, but maybe if folks can think about it next month, we can have it as an agenda item to revisit, discuss.
Moving the date?
Yeah.
Yes. I think we have when we do concluding announcements, we can talk about the date in January. The last couple of years, we've had a combined meeting with Bike Advisory Committee, so we could just plan that, and then you're gonna make the final decision then at that meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
Do folks have any strong thoughts on it? Or, I mean, I just didn't want to spring it on people and
I'm retired, so.
demand about. Yeah. Want to hear you say in the back of the band, Ron.
Thursday afternoon, Sunday morning.
I'm a solid yes. Where do you want
Okay.
to?
It's fine to me.
Any known conflicts?
Do we need to vote on that?
No.
Okay.
The handlers will take care of
Martin will decree it. Okay.
it. Moves.
We'll make it so.
Okay. Oh, great. Thanks, everybody.
So it's the 4th.
Will be the
Thursday.
4th Thursday.
That'll be 23rd. Yeah.
So we'll have Christmas together. Great. Well, thanks for that. Moving on to old business, regional plan 2045. Follow-up discussion and review of the draft.
So that's probably just largely a reminder that the final comments are due on the 19th.
Next Thursday.
It's Thursday.
Next Thursday. Yeah.
I think that's all we need to talk about. I know you had your conversation last time. Any follow-up questions, thoughts?
Were people able to navigate that
Yeah, I was, yeah.
website and
That's
add
good,
comments?
Easy to have.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did want to mention one thing from the previous item. Transportation Commission is really interested in like having a stronger kind of relationship with its two subcommittees. And they actually talked about having someone serve as a liaison to different people serve as liaisons to each subcommittee. So we've invited them.
Yep.
I think they're going to kind of see when our meetings end up being, and then they may start attending. Councilmember McCarthy was the council liaison to the Transportation Commission. And he was always fairly good about coming to both Bike Advisory and Ped Advisory Committee meetings. This is his last week, I think, on the council. So when the new council is seated next week,
17th.
the 17th, they will make assignments. So we may have a new person. And it's the person who's assigned to transportation can also choose to come. If they're assigned to transportation, they get three commissions to go to in one. So it's kind of a bonus deal for them.
Thanks for that reminder, Martin. I forgot about Councilmember McCarthy. He will be missed. He was great. Including general business reports. You got a list of things here, man. This is the biggest report list yet.
See, we can be selective. PC appointments and reappointments. The only one that we're full except for Jody's pending when we have a couple of applications. So maybe at the next meeting or the meeting after that, we can go back to reviewing the applications. I think there's at least two new ones, I think, that we haven't seen before. Otherwise, we have 7. First time in a while.
Living large.
Yeah, enjoy it.
I am.
Yeah. I mentioned asphalt foots repair and replacement. We're making progress on that. We're trying to get a project ready to do next spring. And the short version is the city manages 8 miles of asphalt trails. They are in various degrees of disrepair. So we're trying to address all 8 miles, and we're trying to prioritize based on what the function of the trail is. So like if it serves a school, it would get a higher priority, and what its condition is. So what level of treatment it needs. There's a bunch of trails that just need to be replaced. Like there's just no way of repairing them. We have some money already set aside in the capital budget. We think we can forward some additional money to do more of a comprehensive, take more of a comprehensive approach and address all 8 miles. We're also building in kind of ongoing maintenance every few years into our capital plan. So we know what the things that we need to do to keep asphalt trails in better condition, we'll have the money to do for a while. So that's making good progress. Kaibab Lane, I just wanted to bring up. It's maybe less applicable to the pedestrian world than it is to bicycle world, but they closed off part of Kaibab Lane. It's caused all kinds of disruption with the cycling community, because that was a very popular way of avoiding Route 66, I think, and having to go the long way around. We've reached out to the property owner to see if there might be a way to just have bike access through there. I'll be honest, it hasn't gone great yet, but we're hopeful that we can maybe reach some level of accommodation. I think if the owner were willing, we'd be willing to, we, the city, would be willing to pay for an easement to have like perpetual access for bikes, but we'll see if that happens. I'll let you know when things come out. D is pedestrian recall and bike signal detection. And does everybody know what pedestrian recall is? When you get to an intersection as a pedestrian, you typically have to press the button and it calls the walk light. Pedestrian recall means that the walk light comes on every time the light for the signal for vehicles turns green. It tends not to be used. Does that make sense? So you don't have to push a button. Like if you walk downtown, outside of the ADOT streets on the outside of downtown, like the internal streets where there's a signal, there's no pedestrian button. So the pedestrian signal just comes on automatically. That's pedestrian recall. So there's a member of the BAC who's working with ADOT, doing an amazing job, I have to say, with talking to ADOT about having pedestrian recall at different places along Country Club and Route 66, where there are foot trails and traffic signals. And he's convinced them to do it at like 3 locations so far. Yeah,
Impressive.
The reason they don't do it is because a pedestrian signal, the walking light, the countdown, will add to signal cycles. And so when it doesn't add to signal cycles, the signal works more efficiently. You can decide
Works more efficiently.
amongst yourselves silently if that, that's a worthwhile trade-off. Pedestrians. And so, we weigh a number of things like, what does it do to the signal lengths in that cycle? How many pedestrians are crossing, that sort of thing. Really, I think the reason that Kevin was successful with ADOT is because it didn't really affect the signal timing, that those lights were already fairly long signals. So adding a pedestrian cycle in the middle of it didn't really change much.
Didn't succeed with the leading pedestrian interval though, right? That was
Right.
part of the original campaign and that was not. So the light for the pedestrian goes on before vehicle lights go on.
Okay, I think the rest we can go through pretty quickly. The first mile, last mile we talked about. Butler Avenue complete streets. We're continuing to work through kind of the first steps with federal highways. We don't really have a construction schedule for that that's definitive, but it will be within a couple of years. And then the rest I just included. Metro Plan's working on a few things. I thought it might be interesting. We don't have to talk about them, but there's a few things that I think this group would be interested in that are being worked on the side. If it ever gets to a point where it's helpful to have Kim come in and talk about some of those things, we'll do that. It's Kim Austin who is doing this for Metro Plan. She's been here before. Two quick things with capital projects that are worth mentioning. One is that a couple of weeks ago, I think last week, the city council approved development agreements with the three major property owners along the JWP John Wesley Powell alignment. So that's all kind of worked out. And I think that now that that's in place, that road project will move pretty fast and development in that area will move forward pretty quickly.
You were saying a couple, 2 to 5 years or something is what
Yeah.
I remember thinking. Yeah, that's good.
So that may go faster than we thought it would. So we'll keep you all updated as things happen. And then the second one is related to the Lone Tree Overpass, and it was kind of hung up because of Arizona Materials and relocating it. And the city is signing over a check to move Arizona Materials. So Lone Tree Overpass may go faster on it.
Where'd they find?
I think we just gave them money.
All right.
So I'll get it.
We're tired of trying to find a spot.
Retiring.
You can go wherever
There's
you
12
want.
or
but you
13
can't stay
bags
here.
of money.
Yeah.
Make it what you will. Perfect.
Yeah.
Gonna put it in National Forest, bro. Your eyes are funny, Ron.
I'll just add on the capital projects update. There was a great, like project by project update at the Transportation Commission meeting last week. And I think the meeting was pretty short anyway, but, it's on either the city website or the YouTube page. I feel like dialing that up, like they just ran through everything, and kind of those updates, but a little more in depth. So if you're wondering about any of the giant projects, because there's a lot of them and they're starting, like those two are starting to move surprisingly quickly. But just recommend if you're interested, take a look at the Transportation Commission meeting from last week, because there was a really great update that maybe we can do something here similar in the next little while.
Okay.
Including announcements, agenda items for next meeting, which we're thinking about the joint meeting.
All okay with that?
Yes. The new folks, we just meet, is it only annually or do we do it twice? Sporadically?
I think we did it twice last year.
Feel like we
One
did.
was, like our historic January
Yeah.
combined meeting, and then one was, I think is a Butler or some big
Butler.
project.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's Butler for.
BNN came and gave a formal presentation, so I think it was easier to just get everybody in the room at once.
Yeah, but for the new folks, we just a joint meeting with all the folks from the Bicycle Advisory Committee. We're gonna need some more chairs with this crowd. This is great.
Will that be the 23rd then, or do we have a date for that?
We don't. I think it could be, either the third or the fourth. I think we
You
could
mean third
decide.
or fourth Thursday?
Thursday.
Yeah, third or fourth Thursday, sorry.
For what it's worth, I'm gonna be gone on the 4th Thursday.
All right, then we'll plan on the third.
Decided.
Just need one reason.
First one to give a reason, I'm going. 5-year capital plan, data pedestrian bicycle crash report. That's all your ideas for the next meeting?
Yep.
Great. Anybody have anything else they'd like us to consider for the next meeting?
Has there been any monitoring or follow-up since that speed limit on Butler was reduced? Any like enforcement updates or anything? 'Cause from what I see, people are still just screaming down there. So,
Okay.
Yeah, we did a follow-up speed study and things didn't really change very much.
Yeah.
Like speeds weren't.
We were told that though, right, as I remember.
Yeah. We'd have to get an update from the police department. I'm not sure what they've done in the way of enforcement. I know they, even before we were talking about it, they were indicating that it was hard for them to do enforcement.
I was behind a cop going 45.
I'm going. I'm the guy going 30.
Yes, on that. Okay. With that, thanks to all our new members. Thanks to all of our visitors. It was great to have other folks join us. And with that, we will adjourn the meeting at 1800. Thanks, everybody.
Y'all are more timely than BNC. I don't feel like we ever get out of here before 6:30.
When we started,
That JW Powell
when the
thing.
meeting was called.
Hey,
Your girlfriend still, because I think you and I were talking, you told me like your girlfriend's just living.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
When did you,
No
did you ask me
not going
about that? Was that mostly just about the program in its entirety, or was there something specific?
No, just, yeah, just making sure.
Opening
Yeah,
up
yeah.
two corridors going east
That
and
would
west.
be
Makes
ideal.
so
There's really only like 66, but.
Yeah, that's it.
The interstate, and that's it. There's nothing like on the south.
And it's just a lot, it's one of the few.
That's why I came.
Like you missed
Have
one.
fun. Getting
I
up
gotta go to
early.
bed.
Yeah, I know. Okay, well, thanks, guys. Thanks, everybody.
Of course.
So how long am I allowed to just like hang on here?
Definitely.
Wasn't.
Until you get bet on the journey.